What up? Welcome. In this upcoming video series, we're going to port all programs from the book Programming from the Ground Up for macOS on the x86 and the ARM64 processor. So if you're interested in learning assembly language, that's a great way to start. Welcome. Whenever you try to learn assembly language, one of the most recommended books is this one, Programming from the Ground Up from Jonathan Bartlett, and rightfully so. This is a brilliantly composed book as opposed to, I dare to say, most books on programming, or you can even say on any scientific subject, because a lot of these books suffer from the problem that they take a little thing that you don't really need, that you need, but you don't really need at a certain point, and then blow it up to a whole chapter. And all of a sudden you're reading to 20, 30 pages about something and you have no idea why. Not so in this book. This book has simply 10 programs in 10 chapters that are very educational and built on top of each other to teach us assembly language. One of the absolute brilliant ideas is actually to use the exit code right in the first program to communicate with the programmer. That allows us to print or to output, I should say, a 1-byte number. In other words, a number between 0 and 255. That allows to do a linear search in the second chapter already. Now, another great thing about the book is that he has one layer of teaching and then a second layer of teaching. While the second chapter is about linear search, it really is about addressing mode and about branching. In the third chapter, it's about functions, but in reality it's about how the stack and the C calling convention works. So after learning these 10 programs, you will have a way better grasp on how assembly language works, and that's why this is a great start to get into assembly language. And I highly recommend it, and now it's possible to do it on your macOS device natively. So you might still have doubts if you want to start your assembly learning experience here. Or if you even want to start learning assembly at all. That's another topic for another day. When I wanted to start learning assembly, one of the big problems I encountered was that a lot of people came and said, well, you know, assembly is very, very closely tied to the processor. And if you program for one processor, you can't really port it to another processor, and therefore it's not really worth it to learn. While that's fundamentally true, the same can be said for any program. If I compile a program for a Linux system and it needs a specific library, I cannot just take it and put it on macOS and it will run. So don't let this notion discourage you from learning assembly language. Remember, we are only using a couple of opcodes. We're using add, load, store, move, compare, branch. Those are available on an ARM64 processor. They are also available, or very certainly available, on an x86 processor. They're available today and they were available 20 years ago. Also little things, which syntax should you learn? AT&T or Intel? It doesn't really matter. Remember, this is all about understanding how programs work on a processor level. How a C program is compiled into assembly language and then opcodes. Because the assembly language that we are using here is basically a translation from opcodes to readable instructions. So I hope I can motivate you to not get discouraged on where to start and cut this journey of should I do this or should I learn that or should I start here. Cut that short. Just go with these 10 programs. You can now do it on your macOS device. In about 2 weeks you will be done and will know a lot more how you like assembly, and then leverage from there, go to wherever place you want to go. So why am I doing this series? Well, this book is from 2004, which becomes very apparent when he says a modern computer has 16 megabytes of RAM. Today, most students and even most developers simply work on a MacBook as their primary device. And I wanted to have this book, as well as assembly language in general, to be easily accessible for everybody who wants to play around with it. Because that's what I wish I had when I started. And especially with assembly, it always feels a little off if you have to rely on an emulator or to SSH into a machine, because you're supposed to code close to the metal. Now, if you don't have a MacBook and are working on Linux, of course you can still follow along. The book was, after all, written for Linux. Actually, before I ever touched the book, there was already a guy called Reeld who had ported all the programs from 32-bit to 64-bit. So shoutouts to him. I put the link in the description, because him having done that definitely gave me the courage to purchase the book and say, okay, then I can also port it to macOS, which is essentially a Linux-like system. Now, I did this a couple of years ago and wanted to do the video series back then, but you all know what happened next. Apple released the M1 chip and all the architecture switched from x86 to ARM64, and I thought releasing the x86 version without the ARM64 version is not really worth it. Unfortunately, or should I say fortunately, life got a little bit in the way. I'm now in the United States. I didn't really have the time to do it, but now I had a couple of days. Everything is ported to the ARM version and it's already on GitHub. So if you are an early bird watcher, my friend, you can already check them out. Otherwise, just wait 4 or 5 weeks till I release the videos on the ARM64 version. Now, you might ask, why even bother with the x86 version if the ARM64 version is already available? Well, the book is obviously a lot closer to the x86 version, right? As a matter of fact, when I ported it, the only thing that really where it came down to was finding out the syscalls on macOS, which addressing modes changed, and I remember aligning the stack made a little bit of a problem. But apart of that, they are essentially the same program. On the ARM version, it's a little bit different. The instructions have now 3 parameters or 3 parameters wide. They are limited to 32-bit, and it looks a little bit different. Although they are still the same program, I still think it's better to have first the x86 version and then port it to the ARM64 version. Also keep in mind that ties together with what I've said earlier. Don't focus on the processor and on the syntax. That will come and go. What matters are the underlying principles, and they are the same on both architectures on this level. So, with having said all of that, I hope I can encourage you to come with me on this journey and learn assembly language, either on the x86 or on the ARM64 processor. Either way, it's gonna be a lot of fun. Let's get started.